Witam Państwa serdecznie, Błażej Hrabkowicz, jesteśmy w Toruniu, festiwal filmowy EnergaCAMERIMAGE, and our guest is cinematographer Paul Guilhaume. Hello Paul.
Hi.
How are you doing in Toruń?
Yeah, it's good, I'm great.
Yeah? Everything okay?
Yeah.
I know you had a talk about, a seminar about working with Jacques Audiard on Paris 13th district, but before we get to that film, I want to ask you about the film I really enjoyed, and that is Eva. It was in Polish cinemas, and I really liked this film because it is a sort of coming-of-age story, but in a very particular circumstances, when you have a girl, a main character who is losing sight. So with that in mind, with the main character losing sight, and within of course, and also given the fact that the film is a visual medium, what was your approach as a DOP alongside the director to the visual storytelling in that film?
So, to start more generally, just on Eva, we just wanted to shoot, for example, on film. We had been making together with Leah this previous short film, Yellow Island, which has kind of general rehearsal for Eva, and this is when we realized that despite what was said, we could just shoot it on film, just because we knew that with her style of filmmaking we would just be able to shoot only 1 hour of images per day, and we would stick to that. So we arranged that. And
what do you mean her style of filmmaking?
Because Leah's style of filmmaking is like, she, at this time at least, she knew very well what she wanted, and it was like we had a very precise decoupage. We didn't film the rehearsals. So when you're kind of organized like she is, and her cinema is in a way organized, you can afford to shoot on film without losing any magical performance from the first rehearsal, for example, because it was not what we were looking for. Yeah. And of course, Leah writes visually. It's very often something like that people think when they read the scripts we write together. They always think that I brought like the sentence about the dark light coming down and everything. It's not true. She knows what images she wants very early, even before she puts them in the script. So it's a real chance to work with directors like this, because you just have to bring something, but the main ideas are all there in the script. So the loss of sight, actually, it was also in the script from the beginning. It starts on a sunny beach and it ends in a late, dark night with the sun starting to rise. Yeah. But there was kind of a scenario of the image already in the script. Yeah. And with Leah's sisters, who was the art director of the film, we just started from a very broad color palette, also in that beach where you have all the colors you can imagine, and then progressively colors disappear and you just end with some blue and some magenta, I guess, and the film ends with 2 colors, with an underexposed image, as opposed to the start of the film where it was almost overexposed and with many colors. So you have this shrinking
also visual trajectory sort of her losing
exactly.
her sight.
So everything, the light progressively leaves the film, and the last half an hour of the film is in darkness, and the colors start to faint too at the end.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You mentioned about Leah being a very visual director. And many cinematographers we talk to say that you have the different kind of directors. There are directors who are very visual, who are very involved in creating the visual style of the film, like with Eva and Leah. But there are also directors who focus on working with actors, who focus on the script, and they leave the visual side to the creativity of cinematographer. Do you have an experience of working with both kind of directors?
No, actually, I think I tend to want to work with directors who have a strong world already, and just to be able to to dive into that world and to work with them. But it's never something that has made me like excited or to have to imagine things alone. I don't enjoy being responsible of the whole look of the movie. I enjoy just diving into a world more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what world Jacques Audiard did Jacques Audiard create in Paris 13th district? What did you dive into?
Actually, I discovered something great with Jacques Audiard as a director, is that A Prophet for me was a film that just was one of my first visual discoveries. I still see this movie very often because of the color grading, the lights, everything is just to me perfect in a way in A Prophet. But when I started to try to grab still images of A Prophet, I was always disappointed by the moment I would choose to grab the image. And actually I think that now I understand why. It's because Jacques Audiard has an aesthetic not of stillness, but an aesthetic of movement. And actually when you say that and when you understood that, you just almost have a key to understand his filmmaking and where does the unity of all of these films that he created that are also different, and the unity of all of these films is movement, I guess. So
that is true, actually. Now we're talking about it. Now when you talk about it, and I cast my mind back to all the Jacques Audiard films, it is true, and it's also very cinematic.
Yeah, exactly.
The cinema is about movement. I think about movement and time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
If you go back to lexic or Greek, you just can say that photography is about writing with light, as opposed to cinematography is writing with movement. And this is, in this way, Jacques Audiard is a cinematographer because he writes his stories through movement. And when something is still in the frame, he will always find a solution. He doesn't formulate it like this way. I found this kind of way of theorizing his work by being near to him, but there's always more something that is bothering him until the movement arrives in the frame. So until that moment he thinks something is wrong.
Yeah. Does he plan this movement or this frame beforehand, or is it all happening on the set? Like he thinks, okay, something is wrong here, and he sort of creates this movement.
So he tends to really trust the people around him, so you can totally convince him that you will shoot it on a tripod or so, and you can, if you work your way through that, you can arrive on the set and have the tripod already ready, and he will have said, yes, let's do that. But if it's not, like, as I said, I think into this kind of general aesthetic, I think that's something that he will just say, isn't there something that is dead, or isn't it too still, or isn't it too locked? And there was something that will just hit him. And actually, we solve many situations by bringing a new movement into the sequence, either the movement of an actor or the movement of a light that would just go on the ceiling and just create something more, or the movement of a handheld camera. If the sequence is still, for example, he will very likely shoot two people talking and seated with a handheld camera, and maybe shoot someone that is running with a camera and tripod, since there's movement somewhere already.
So do you sit down with him, or did you sit down with him to talk about this, the visual idea for the film beforehand, or did you have just maybe sort of a general conversation and then all the details were fleshed out during the making, on the set?
So there was a lot of preparation, actually, because we met with Jacques Audiard on a TV show. He did two last episodes of The Bureau, which is a French TV show, a spy series, and he was like kind of the guest star of the ending.
Guest director, yeah.
Yeah, he was the guest director of the last 2 episodes of the last season. And I was called for being the cinematographer of these 2 episodes, And I first didn't knew that there was even Jacques Audiard involved, and I went to this job interview without even knowing what I was doing here, since I realized that the showrunner had seen nothing I had done. He didn't know who I was, and I was wondering, there are so many DPs that he knows and know him because he's a great director also. Like, why am I here? And I have to, he asked me to tell my resume just when I entered the office. And after a point, he just said, and how did you meet Jacques Audiard? And then I had a rush. I just understood why I was here. Just he was directing the 2 episodes, and he had given my name after seeing Ava. And actually he called then Léa Misius, Ava's director, to be the co-scriptwriter of Les Olympiades. Mm-hmm. So, when about the talks about aesthetic and everything in front, the thing is that we met on a project that was shot very fast, and this is something he wanted also to bring life, I guess. He wanted the film to go fast and to be rehearsed in pre-production, and just the shooting would be almost like something that happens like this. Yeah. So we had all of the liberty to prep as much as we wanted with art department and with costume designers and the lighting department almost. We had a lot of means given to us to prep. So we just studied on one main axis that he just told me one thing about this black and white. It's, I want this black and white to be shiny. And I had to then just deal with that information, and a couple of movies, maybe Manhattan or Lenny of Bob Fosse, that looked like maybe what it could look like. Yeah. But also he wanted it to be digital. He wanted the image to be in black and white, but in a modern way. And we realized during tests that lens aberrations, grain, everything was bringing us to the past because of the black and white parameter. So very soon we wanted to have a very sharp image, which is something I never did before. But I have to admit that during the tests, when I was turning even anamorphic films or analog films into black and white, I felt like I've already seen this image. And one photographer that we loved in prep was Alex Majoli, who does very, very defined pictures, very silvery, with a strange contrast, because he just dims the highlights, but you have a silvery kind of feeling in the grays. And we knew that we wanted to achieve this shiny black and white. Mm-hmm. We talked about what is a shiny black and white in prep, of course, and it was like 4 main points of the characteristics of a shiny black and white. We thought that it should be a lot of micro contrasts in the frame. So actually brilliance, just you have to have a hot spot, and just near to it a black spot. For example, water on the hand will create this micro contrast. There was some macro contrast. It would be a silver object, a glass speck, or metal or plastic, that would create macro contrast in the frame and make it more shiny. There was a very important parameter that was to have practical lights in the frame, to have 100% white in every frame that we could. We decided that if we make pose on the movie, you have to have a pure white and a pure black in every frame. So practical light helped us to do that. And the last parameter, that at least for nights, it should be mainly dark around a very silver or light area, so it would enhance the feeling that it is shiny.
And it certainly is shiny, black and white. You succeeded in doing so. So I guess congratulations. Thank you for talking to us, Paul. It was really interesting to hear from you how these films were made visually. Nice to have you here in Toronto.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Dziękuję.